Unfortunately, this project is really pissing off the internet, but that's all right. I'm just a dude in a shop that is trying to experiment and have some fun and share it with whoever's interested. And for those of you that are like the overwhelming majority that are loving this project, welcome to the party. And in today's episode, we are diving in deep because so many of you have said that you've been loving all the deep dives I've been doing in this series so far. And I promise you, you're going to see stuff today that you have never seen on an off-road YouTube channel. I have been spending some time trying to come up with a design that I liked to gusset these lower inner Cs, and I think I figured it out. The good news about that is now the most time-consuming part for me on any of these builds is just decision-making. Brainstorming, staring at it, going outside, cleansing my mind, coming back in, brainstorming. But now that we have a design for the lower inner C, I was able to very quickly cut up something for the upper inner C. And once we get the lower and upper inner Cs gusseted, burnt in, and then maybe some sort of a connection piece between, I'm gonna be putting myself in a situation where I'm gonna be forced to make some pretty hard decisions. One is gonna be steering design. Another one is going to be shoring up this center section because this is like made for racing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's only an 1/8 inch thick. Hopefully it's 3/16. Either way, we need to build plates for this. We need to move our fill hole up here. It's funny how it looks like we've come a long way, but we still have so much work to do before this is gonna be like a turnkey axle. Believe it or not, the full makeup of this inner C is almost double what it is for a Ford Super Duty, just because we have all of that offset that we need to account for with the that extra 4 inches of offset from the portal box. So for that reason, I am really gusseting and boxing in the lower part of this inner C because it's just so important that even though we've increased the length of this lower C over like what a traditional inner C would be, it's so important that this remains strong because there's a lot of extra force and a lot of extra leverage for, well, this is my third build using portals on this channel. So you've heard me talk about this concept ad nauseum of the extra force that is inflicted on the rest of your suspension and everything else, steering everything, just because we have this extra leverage point from our portal. But while I'm fabbing all this up and we're boxing in the upper part of our inner C and adding these gussets that I've been talking about, I do need to clear something up that I've seen a lot of people are confused on, and that is what happens whenever we flip our differentials upside down. I want to make it super clear that taking a low pinion and flipping it upside down does not turn it into a high pinion axle. I don't want to confuse anybody, but technically speaking, we are making high pinions, but only in terms of clearance and axle placement, not in terms of strength. So I'm underneath my 73 Land Rover right now, and this is a great example because I have some 80 series Land Cruiser axles in this thing. The rear axle is a low pinion, and the front axle is a high pinion. And the difference is not just the pinion placement. The difference, whenever people are referring to low pinion and high pinion, is the strength. So we've maximized the ring and pinion strength for the rear axle by making it a low pinion, and we've maximized the ring and pinion strength of the front axle by making it a high pinion. And the difference is the rotation. The rear is standard rotation, the front is reverse rotation. So these are not like the same gear set, just placed in different orientation. They're completely different. The front axle is a Toyota 8-inch. This is a very standard size that Toyota's been making for a long time, and you can put a low or a high pinion in it. Luckily for Land Cruiser owners, the front axle comes with the high pinions, you're maximizing the strength. But just for a science experiment, if we threw a Toyota 8-inch low pinion in the front end, it would work just fine. The tires would turn the way they're supposed to, all that. The difference is we would reduce the strength of the front axle by roughly 30% just because of the way things are spun by the transfer case. As you can see, I don't have an output on this thing, but you can see where it's spinning my finger. I'm giving this a clockwise input. That clockwise input is giving me a clockwise output, which is then gonna go to the rear axle. No matter how you flip that rear differential, it is a standard rotation cut ring and pinion, which means that it's going to receive this standard rotation. The way I'm spinning it right now would drive us forward, which is where you want maximum strength, because that's how most of us are driving, is forward. So because of that, We're gonna be able to gain clearance on the rear axle, which is awesome. We're gonna make it a high pinion clearance wise, but it's still gonna retain the low pinion strength. But unfortunately, and we're gonna get to this in a little bit when I tear apart another axle, the opposite is true for the way that we're gonna build this front axle. But for now, we just need to get to fabbing, and then once I get this other stuff torn apart at the end of the video, we're gonna talk about why the front is not a high pinion in terms of strength because of the way that we're building it. Let's talk about oiling. This is something that I've had a lot of people ask me about, and I think that the factory fill hole on this housing is going to be exactly where we want it. So if you imagine we're driving forward, the tire is spinning this way, it then goes through our portal, which then makes it go the opposite way. So now the axle shaft is spinning backward, which makes our ring gear spin backwards. So if we fill it up to here, we're going to have a ton of oil in there. I hope that it's not too much. We're going to have to see. I've got some venting ideas. Anyway, the ring gear is going to be flipping it up and churning it back towards our pinion. So we have three bearings that we need to make sure stay lubricated. There's a nose bearing right there. There is a bearing right in here. And then there is a bearing up here. There are reliefs top and bottom, or like little vents, I guess you could say. Man, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that in there, that are gonna make it to where oil can come in from the top and the bottom, what used to be the top and bottom, and flow very easily through those bearings. So as far as oiling is concerned in the front axle, I am not worried. We will, whenever we get to the rear axle, we're going to use the same logic and figure that out. So right now, what I'd like to do is make sure that this housing is actually strong enough to take an impact from a rock, and we need to cut and move this because this is going to be our drain. We're actually going to put our drain up here, and I will go over that whenever we're done. Now I'm going to start a whole bunch of little projects. For some reason, my brain just works better that way. I want to build some armor for the front while we're relocating this fill plug, but I don't want to finish weld any of it until we pull everything off and we put the alignment bar, like the real alignment bar, back through this, because I don't want there to be any risk of twisting and contorting while we finish weld this center section. And while I'm doing all that, I'm going to start working on visualizing some front steering knuckle type things and rear steering knuckle type things. I would like to put the tie rod on the back. This will be the third truck that I've done that to, and I like that style. And I know a lot of people are wondering, why wouldn't you go full hydro? The reality is I can make this a hydro assist steering setup for like a few $100s, whereas like the cheapest full hydro kits are, you know, somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. And we're only wheeling on 40s, maybe 42s tops. You just don't need full hydro to wheel like that, especially with the offset we're going to have. We're going to have a very low scrub, and I've got some other steering ideas that I'm going to share with you here in a little bit that I think are going to reduce our scrub when we turn even more. In order to establish the right distance between our ball joints to where we're going to mount our steering arm, I need to take a measurement of the pitman arm that's on the TJ. Now remember, I took this from a junkyard many years ago off of a full-size Jeep, and I think it was like 6 1/4 or something. We are at 6 1/2. I almost say 6 3/8. So the way this works is whenever we have the pivot from the steering box, there's a certain length of that pivot going lock to lock. If we change that dimension, it's going to change how much we can steer. So we want to make sure that the length of our pitman arm from center to center is the same as the length of the steering arm that we're going to build, that will be hole to hole from the center line of our ball joint to the center line of our steering joint. And that way, as this, how would I demonstrate this? It would have the same amount of swing with one another. Whereas if this was longer than this, we would turn full lock and this would only turn a little bit. You see what I'm saying? So I had to come out, get a dimension off of this, and then we can still fine tune later, but at least now I have something to go for. All of our steering and suspension parts, pieces, and components are on their way from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive. And that brings me to today's sponsor, which is Onyx Offroad. Onyx Offroad makes phenomenal software. It's what me and all of my friends use to plan all of our trips. And in fact, we've got some really cool trips that you're gonna be able to follow along with Onyx Offroad later in this year. But the reason this pertains to Barnes 4-Wheel Drive is that Barnes 4-Wheel Drive, Method Race Wheels, Fox Shocks, all of these companies that we spend tons of money through to get quality parts, if you're an elite member of Onyx Offroad, you can save tons of money. I mean, literally the biggest savings in the industry level money. And what's nice about that is you buy the membership, you buy all your parts, and the amount of money you save covers the membership and then some. So then you end up with top tier software essentially for free. So if you're looking for a software to save you money, give you good places to go off-road, and help support our channel, scan this link, this barcode that's on your screen right now, or click through any of the links and stuff that are in the description of this video. This is a huge score. I got this axle for 300 bucks, which I would argue is on the high side for sure. But I've been looking at Facebook Marketplace for weeks to try to find a Ford 9-inch with a 355 ratio because it's gonna save us a whole bunch of money. And I found this. So the good news is I don't need the housing, and my buddy Kelly at Muddy Beards does. He's pretty sure he bent that rear 9-inch housing on his S10. So he's gonna buy the housing, and then I'm gonna sell the posi, which this should have, and the 31 spline axle shafts, which this should have. But until I tear it apart real quick, little side quest. It's so nice out, I wanna be outside instead of inside. So if I tear this apart real quick, we should be able to make sure that this is a 355 ratio like the tag says. And if that's the case, we just saved a ton of money on the third member setup for the other axle. I can't be too confident. Like, buying this axle is definitely a gamble because at the end of the day, when you show up to somebody's house, the tag says 355, the owner swears that it's probably 355. Well, they don't even say probably, they swear it is. I can't really request to like strip the whole axle down in front of the guy's yard. So I'm taking a gamble on the fact that these are the exact gears that I calculated out that I want to pair with these portal boxes. I've been holding off on buying the other gear set until I got these and inspected them. And if this is truly a 355, then I can go ahead and order those other ones. But the reason I didn't order is because if this is like a, I don't know, like a 330 something or whatever, then it would be close enough that I could order a matching set for the rear. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we're gonna pull this apart and it's actually going to be a 355 ratio. This is a big moment. I hope it is the ring and pinion that the guy swears that it was. So we're gonna mark it right here, and it's 3.5 to 1. So that means, oh, I probably should have. That means that I'm gonna spin this 3.5 times, and that should be exactly in the same place. Here we go. 1, 2, 3 and a half. Oh, look at that. I don't know if you can see in the camera. Right back to where it's supposed to be. So sometimes they'll stamp it on the ring gear. This ring gear doesn't say 3.55 anywhere. It says like 4 something and then has a Ford part number. So that's good news for us. I just saved a boatload of money over having to buy the third brand new, buy the yoke brand new, buy the pinion brand new, buy all the bearings, buy the ring and pinion. There's a good amount of slop, so we're gonna have to kind of recondition some things and check out all the bearings, but we have a really good, inexpensive way to start on the other axle. Nick is working on some fun stuff here. Oh, look at that. I was telling him when he started cutting that apart, I was like, you know, there's a moment when this was brand new. I had like 3 miles. I went and got it from the dealership. And now we're doing that to it. No turning back now. No turning back now. We are opening up a whole bunch of space with this kit we found online. that should be able to make it to where I can put a real coilover in here. We're gonna do a bunch of fab work for like a crossover strut tower type of thing to really stiffen it up and give us room to put a real coilover in here, because I really want to figure out a way to make this have as much travel as like a straight axle counterpart. So at least as much travel as my wife's Gladiator. If you want to deep dive with me, here we go. Go on Google or on your phone or whatever, type in Ackermann angle, and then just look through images. This is going to start to give you a good idea of the basics just with these simple images of what Ackermann angle is. Then start clicking around and learning. So as this one says right here, to create the Ackermann steering principle, the steering arms are aligned to turn the inside wheel at a sharper angle than the outside wheel. This allows the inside wheel to follow a smaller radius circle than the outside wheel. And basically, if we align the steering to where it's just perfectly in line with the ball joints and we turn and our wheels are steering at the exact same angle, our front two wheels, it's going to scrub. But with the Ackermann principle, it allows us to turn one wheel sharper into our corners than the other one, and it alleviates that bind. And there are some benefits off-road to this. I think that this image really helps get an understanding of what's going on here. You can see the difference in the two angles, and that changes based on where you connect your steering rods to your steering joints, essentially. So like the pivot point for both knuckles. So we're going to use some of these basic principles in order to take advantage of a really rare quality that we are building into this front axle. This is a topic that I never see covered in the off-road space, but there are benefits to calculating out the Ackermann angle for the right build. Most people, this does not apply because you can't change it even if you wanted to, but we have the ability to build a very good Ackermann angle into this steering geometry, and this is how I'm planning on doing it. This would be a lot better if I had everything to finish the steering so we could test it, and if we had a camera on the ceiling. So in the next video, whenever we build the steering out, I will be able to demonstrate Ackermann angle a lot better. But for now, I will show you how I am setting this up. This is the center line of our vehicle, this string. This is set up 105 inches from, basically this would represent the center line of our rear axle. That's the center line of our front axle. And if we get the correct steering geometry and the correct Ackermann angle, it is going to optimize our ability to turn smoothly without scrubbing the tires near as much. And this is a very rare opportunity, and I'll show you why. So this tape measure is only going to one side, and that's because whatever I build on this side, we're just gonna replicate for the other. But imagine that the Ackermann angle would be, it would be determined by this line here and then another one going over there. So if we go from the center of our rear axle all the way through the center of the pivot point for this front knuckle, we want where the steering mounts to be right underneath this tape measure. I hope that that makes sense. And the reason that we have a very rare opportunity to do a good Ackermann angle is because I decided to run our tie rod on the back. Because if you follow this angle through to the front, it makes it to where if we connect the driver and passenger side knuckles together, and we did it up here, there's not enough room to be able to continue that path all the way out to here because it's gonna end up running into your wheel. So we have a really rare opportunity to be able to run the tie rod on the backside, have a proper Ackermann angle, which is then going to give us big benefits where I think we're gonna see them is gonna be snow. Anything that is loose, because with the proper Ackermann angle, this side, if let's say we're turning left, this side is going to steer a little bit steeper than this side, and that actually reduces the amount of scrub from the tires. So that's going to be a little easier to show in the next video after I actually build the steering. But one more thing I want to bring up, because I know people are going to ask, this does not affect the Ackermann angle at all because this is not connected to the other side. So the Ackermann angle is going to be the geometry and the difference between how much this knuckle turns versus that knuckle. And that is what we're trying to establish by having this little weird, this backyard science project that we have here. So for this is going to go to our drag link, and then that drag link is going to go to our steering box over here. The ideal location for this is going to be basically where this is going to be dead set in front of these two ball joints. We'll just call them ball joints, so that whenever we're driving straight, our pitman arm is straight back, so it's in a neutral position of its sweep, and this is straight forward in a neutral position of its sweep. And that's just going to make it to where it's going to steer the same one way versus the other. Instead of you would notice big time if this was over here whenever you're driving straight, and then it would steer really funny one way versus the other. It wouldn't feel the same. So that is why the front is set up this way. And what I've done here is just to help me calculate exactly where, which I marked it on the table, exactly where this rear steering arm needs to end up in order to optimize our Ackermann angle. I already have a couple of unbelievable snow wheelers that are extremely capable. So I'm not building this for snow, but I'm building this TJ for the intent of it being just a universal truck that I love to use. That's exactly what it was before. Before I was ever on YouTube and I just had one wheeler, I had the TJ. It was my do-it-all truck. And the only thing that this isn't going to do well is camping, just because it's so small. But as far as off-road performance, I want to do snow and, you know, be super successful. I want to do rocks and be super successful. I just want this thing to be good at everything. So I know that Ackermann angle is just like this super tiny detail. Unless you talk to an engineer, they would tell you that it's a big detail. But I would argue that it's a very small detail. And if you looked at two trucks on, you know, on a trail, and one had a phenomenal Ackermann angle and the other one had a terrible one, I don't think you would be able to just tell that one is like wildly more successful. But when I think of the reimagining of this TJ, I think that I want it slightly longer. It was 103-inch wheelbase before. We're just going to squeak it out to like 105. I want to maximize the smoothness of the steering, so we're going to get wheels that are going to bring these tires way in to minimize our scrub radius. I want to have the clearance from portals. I want everything to be geared correctly. I want this Ackermann angle to help smooth things out. And so all these little details, these fine-tuning details, even though this isn't a race truck, I think that they add up to an enjoyable experience, and they add up to a truck that really can do it all. So that is my motivation. And when you see the way that I'm building and prototyping and just kind of having fun in here, I'm just using a lot of the things that I've learned over the last like 21 years of building my own trucks and applying it whenever I get the chance, because it's fun to exercise the things that you've learned. I told you that by the end of the video, we would discuss why the front diff is not going to be as strong as the rear diff. And I'm a little bit talked out. I've talked a lot in this video because so many of you said you've liked all the deep dives. So we'll see how you do on this one. Anyway, let's do this. Can you see the difference between one side of these teeth and the other side? If you've seen me set up gears, I've done tons of videos on how to set up gears. You have a drive side and the coast side. So whenever we are going this way, I think, I might be looking at it backwards. But when you go forward with the low pinion in the rear, it is giving it more strength because of the way that the gears are cut. So if we flip this upside down and we want to go forward, and it's in the front axle, it's actually going the opposite way. So now it is pushing forward with the coast side of the gear. And like we talked about with the transfer case earlier, because of the direction coming out of the transfer case and then the direction of it coming into this front axle, even though everything is going into the transfer case clockwise, it's actually going into this counterclockwise, which is why they reverse cut the gears in order to counteract that. So I hope that that makes sense and clears up some of the mysteries on whether or not the high pinion versus low pinion in this application is going to be strong. So the rear is going to be just as strong as a stock 9-inch as long as I can keep lubricated, and the front will be about 30% weaker than a stock 9-inch. We could increase the strength by buying a high pinion 9. There's aftermarket companies that make them. It would then move our pinion down, which doesn't bother me. With the portals, we're still super high anyway. But what does bother me is that to fully build it out, we'd be looking at like $4 grand. Whereas I was able to get an entire axle for $300. And by the time the power goes through the portals and everything else, I think that this is still going to be plenty strong in this orientation, but time will tell. I want to end this video in a way that is uncomfortable, but I think is very important. And that is telling you to follow your dreams. At the beginning of this video, you saw me post a whole bunch of negativity, just random screenshots of stuff that people say to me just all the time. I mean, those are just the most recent ones, right? And 6 years ago, many of you watched me quit my job to try and pursue this whole thing. And I have been supporting my family ever since with YouTube income, which is crazy to say out loud. And it was such a long shot and so hard to do. And every step of the way, I am called a loser and an idiot and all these different things. All the way up until today, I am literally living on my dream property. I'm building out of my dream shop. I have my dream wife, my dream kids. I've got all these cool trucks, and I am still called a loser. And I am the happiest I have ever been. I want you to know that a lot of you might be scared of what people think of you if you try to pursue your dream. If you have something that consumes you, something that you're passionate about, something that you want to do, you have a job that you hate and you want to better your life, forget about these people. They do not matter. They do not affect your happiness. And the older you get and the wiser you get, the more you're going to realize that these insecurities they do you no good. So I don't know who needs to hear this, but I want you to know that you are worth it. And if you let your dream consume you and you let it inspire you and you work hard as hell to achieve it, you will achieve it. And all the way up until that point where you are at the pinnacle of happiness, you will still have people around you trying to tell you that you're a loser, but you're not. So again, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I hope that this can inspire some of you to try to pursue your dreams because you are worth it. I want to close this video out on a positive note, and I want to say thank you to everybody who has been there's so many of you that have been following me since Bleep and Jeep, which was 6 years ago. And that's so wild to me. And I turn 40 next month, and I feel extremely happy and extremely fulfilled. And you have a lot to do with it. So from the bottom of my heart, you know, those of you that have watched me quit my job to come and do this, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And if you see me when I'm on one of my trips going across the country, please come over and say hi. I'd love to shake your hand. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you on the next one.